Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Carol.
Hello, Roberto.
Great to see you.
Likewise. So happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for being here, for your generosity. We're already live. Actually, I see here that we have 28 people already
Well,
connected.
welcome to those of
And
you who are already here.
so I will, first of all, thank you for your generosity, for your time, for being here, and to the people who is investing 1 hour of their time, which is the only thing that we cannot get back.
That's true.
It's gone.
Our
When it's gone,
most
it's gone. We
valuable
invested.
resource.
Exactly. And we hope that this is a valuable investment of the time. And at the same time, we are not going to check the chat during the conversation until more or less the middle. And still, we invite you to say something in the chat, say hi or
Or
whatever,
ask a
so
question.
we can know that. Yeah, exactly, or drop a question, and then we will check the question in the middle of the conversation. So first, we're going to have that conversation, then we check, and then we see what's in the chat. So I'm going to close everything, and yeah. Yeah. So first of all, Carol, thank you again for being here. You have been 20 plus year the professor at Stanford University in a course called interpersonal dynamics,
Correct.
which is what called Touchy
The
Feely.
students, the
Touchy
students call
Feely.
it touchy feely.
Yeah. And then you, after being to Stanford, you started Leaders in Tech, which is a nonprofit, which also connects the work that you did with technology. You wrote an amazing book, which I have here, which is called Connect, which is about building exceptional relationships with family, friends, and colleagues. You wrote it with David Bradford, who's the other professor of the course. And I'm so excited to be here with you today. And I have, first of all, I have one question. The first question that I
Okay.
have for you is that, and by the way, if I have a goal with this, is that the people who is listening is curious about this that we're talking and goes deeper into that. Maybe buying the book, maybe checking your work. And the purpose of this is sharing this with the most people
We're
possible.
on the same
And
page.
yeah, and actually, I'm curious about one thing. What keeps you so excited and so involved in this after so many years?
You know, it's interesting that you should ask me that question because I just got back from a retreat, a
Yeah.
4-day retreat that we did for our Leaders in Tech participants. And one of them asked me this exact same question. This is so exhausting. How could you have done it for so many years? And my answer is actually quite quite simple, which is I never first of all, I never get bored. I might get tired, but I
Mm,
never get bored because human beings are infinitely fascinating and every one of them
mm,
is different. So just because you have figured out how to break through and connect with one person doesn't mean that you've got it all figured out for the person standing right next to them. So it's infinitely fascinating. That's one. And two, I I would be a billionaire if I had a dollar for every time somebody has said to me, this work, coming across these concepts, learning these skills changed my life. It
wow.
either, so, I get hundreds of calls and emails and visits from former MBAs from Stanford saying, I just became a CEO. I owe it all to you. We would expect that from a business school. Uh, or I just raised my third round of financing and I was successful and I owe it all to you.
Mhm.
But the ones
Yeah.
that really mean even more to me is I'm pretty sure your course just saved my marriage. And now
Mm,
I get, thank you for finally writing a book because my brother didn't go, or my co-founder didn't go to Stanford Business School, didn't take Touchy Feely. And now we have this way of learning how to do this together. And it's completely changed our relationship. So that's what really keeps me going. It's so satisfying. And frankly, I was put on the planet. I believe I was put on the planet to do this, to help people learn how to connect, especially across their differences.
yeah. That's wonderful. And when you said that, it's every time is different. Exactly. And it's something that today works even with the same person.
Exactly, because you're not the same
That
person as you were a year ago. We're all works in
exactly.
progress.
Exactly. And we think that we have this person figured out, and then something happening in their life, they change, their identity change, and what worked didn't work. So what I hear from you is being constantly curious about the other person
Yes,
is one of the key of having this type of relationship. Don't have our assumption blind us.
that's exactly right. And
Mm,
we take we even when a lesson is hard fought, even when we went through a difficulty and we finally figured it out, it's too easy to think, now I get it. Now I understand.
yeah.
Well, now I understand right now for this moment.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, and thank you for that because you also share in the book, and I strongly recommend again to read it. You also share in the book one of your personal story with exactly happened this with your the
Right.
co-author,
I
and
mean, we were incredibly close peers and colleagues and close friends, and he did something that just made me so disappointed and so angry that I said I would never talk to him again. And in fact, in the first chapter, we talk about how when you get to the end of the book, we tell you how we repaired our relationship. It's a little
yes,
teaser.
yeah,
But yeah, and we knew each other really well, Roberto, and that didn't stop us from stepping on a pile of doo-doo and having to figure out how to fix it.
yes, absolutely, and this is a great learning for everyone, and also for me. I think that we can never think that we have arrived there. Then something happens, and we still have to do our work. And if you have the tools, we are better prepared. But then we still have to do the
Yep,
work.
yep. It gives
Be
a
here.
whole new meaning to lifelong learning.
Yes.
And in fact, I don't think you can be effective interpersonally if you don't have a growth mindset. To quote
Mhm.
Carol Dweck, if you don't see things as I don't know how yet. She
Yes.
adds that word yet, it magically transforms any statement. I can't seem to get through to you yet.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is so interesting because when we think of a business school,
Yes,
the last thing
yes,
usually, or at least when I did the university, I'm 43, and when I did the university, I would love to have a course
yes.
called interpersonal relationship. And how is it that, and what's the connection? Of course, the question is tricky. What's the connection with the business school and a course, a program about interpersonal relationship on how to be better with family and friends?
Well, okay, so this is a multi-layered question, and I'm really glad you asked
Yeah.
it. So first of all, to your point, this is not a course hidden away in the psychology department. It's the
Yeah.
most popular course at the Stanford Business School. And people choose
Yeah.
Stanford over Harvard to take this class. It's one of our claims to fame. And why? Because in the end, people do business with people. They
Yeah.
don't do business with ideas or machines or products or money. They do business with people. So until you learn to get the people part right, your success is likely to be a little more limited. But why family and friends? Well,
Mhm.
it turns out that the more you help a whole human being
Yeah.
be effective in their life, the better they're going to do in all of the arenas of their life. So if we help students have more solid marriages and better relationships with their kids, that's going to show up as being a better leader at work. And vice versa. If they learn the skills in leadership, they're going to be better parents. So there's a lot of synergy in the skills and the competencies that they develop. It's a great question.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when you say that, it reminds me also of what we say about this in coaching, because we say we don't do coaching to the problem.
That's right. The
It's coaching
person.
to the person,
Exactly.
to the whole
That's
person.
exactly.
The person comes with I have the struggle with a colleague, blah, 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 blah. And then it comes out some emotion, something. and see that it's something that has to do with the person and how they are and what they express. And one side of this expression is at work, but then it's all connected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I view it exactly the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's it, now actually it should be something to get more into more universities. I'm wondering why universities don't have this,
Well,
and
I'll
we
tell you why.
wait.
I'll tell you why. So there's a misconception, first of all, that all
Mhm.
this soft stuff,
Uh-huh.
it's just the soft stuff. And it's the hard skills, the accounting and finance and
Yeah,
marketing, you know. So there's no question you need all the hard skills. No question.
yeah,
It's just that they're not enough. It turns out you
exactly.
actually need both. And but most of the people who become university, especially business school, especially elite business school professors, are into the hard stuff. They're not into
Hmm.
the soft stuff. So
Yeah.
that's one of the challenges. The other is that teaching a course like this takes enormous resources, way more than
Mhm.
a lecturer standing in front of 75 students and giving them tests and grading papers or even doing case studies. I mean, it's a very, very high touch course, and it's therefore very expensive to deliver. And there's a
Mhm.
very big cost in getting into it because you have to train up a bunch of facilitators. So Stanford's been, I I taught there for 20 years and I left in 2017, and started Leaders in Tech to essentially bring my curriculum to Silicon Valley. But it had been around for a while before I arrived, and the investment in the infrastructure to deliver the course was already in place. So if tomorrow Harvard decided they wanted to add this course, the investment would be huge, enormous, and there's
Mhm.
you'd need somebody very convinced that they need it.
Thank you.
I,
Thank you.
I'll
I
also
would have never imagined
I'll
that.
also tell you another really funny thing. So
Yeah.
so I believe the soft skills are the hardest.
Yeah.
And not too long ago, I was doing a, a workshop for like the highest level managers at NASA. And I looked at them at one point and I said, "Come on, you guys." They were all men. "Come on, you guys. It's not rocket science." And one of them looked at me and said, "Oh, this is so much harder than rocket science."
That's so funny. And actually, when you say that, I'm curious. And see, so you talk about the investment,
Yep.
and there is also an investment required to go to what you call the level of exceptional relationship.
Yes.
I would love to hear what's the definition of your exceptional relationship and what does it take
Yes.
to get
Yeah.
there?
Well, I'm also really glad you asked that because it's important to know that even though the name of the book is Building Exceptional Relationships,
Yeah.
we're not suggesting that you should make every single one of your relationships in your life exceptional. That would
Mm,
be exhausting. It would be
yeah.
impractical. It takes way, way too much work. What we're
Yeah.
saying, though, is that there are a number of skills and competencies that it takes to just get from dysfunctional, or what we call contact and no connection, those are your thousands of
Yeah.
Facebook friends,
Yeah.
to robust and functional. So the
Mm,
same skills and competencies that you need to get to functional or robust, if you continue to invest in a relationship, will eventually take you to exceptional. So that's what's important about it's a continuum, really. The
yeah.
6 characteristics that are the hallmarks of these relationships, especially once they move from contact and no connection or dysfunction to robust, is first of all, I I feel more known by you. Doesn't mean you know
Mhm.
every single every secret, but I feel known by you. And and I allow myself to be known, and you allow yourself to be known. And we trust each other, and we
Mm,
trust that our disclosures won't be used against us. And we are honest with each other. So instead of pretending there's no problem and just waiting for it to get bigger and bigger and bigger until it becomes a much harder problem to solve, we name it. We name challenges. We name because we care about each other. We tell each other when we see the other person doing something that we think is hurting them and hurting our relationship and maybe their relationship with somebody else. We resolve conflict productively. That's the fifth one. And the sixth one is related to the fourth, which is we're invested in each other's growth. That's the way we show each other that we care. We are invested in each other's growth. And when you have all six of those, to the extent that you have them, you've moved down the continuum, especially towards robust and functional. And the more you invest in all six and the more you do it, the more likely it is that you eventually get to exceptional. But you actually had a picture of this, which is
Yes.
that if you meet all six characteristics and you get to just robust, it's like
Yeah.
climbing, doing a hike of a
Yeah.
mountain and getting to the upper meadow. And the upper
Yeah.
meadow is usually very beautiful and lovely, and you can take a rest, you can have a picnic, have a glass of wine, and then just kind of hang out there. And that's just robust and functional, and that's good enough for most relationships. And then the metaphor we use in the book is that we, of course, pardon me, sorry. Hello. Uh, I guess yeah. I guess I'll be transparent.
No problem. Yeah.
This is the hospital calling my husband.
Of course.
So I'm sorry for that.
Not at all. Thank you for being here. On the contrary.
They're trying to figure out whether they're going to do surgery.
Okay, well, keep in mind that I live in San Francisco, so that's not all this, I can't be going back and forth 4 times a day.
And the reason that I'm home in my home office doing this is because I didn't want to leave him alone, or I could have gone to my other office.
Thank you.
They're all,
Okay, thank you.
okay. I'm back.
Thanks.
Apologies and
And
appreciate it. And by the way, what a great example of a willingness to be vulnerable. And nothing is ever
Start.
perfect. It's okay. I
and
understand.
and I would like to add one thing, if I may, Carol, which is you just show how much you care about what you just said in the beginning of the conversation, that even in this situation, you are willing to keep the talk because you want to have this impact on the people. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. I knew there was a chance that we'd be interrupted, but you know, a lot of people signed up and I'm committed to doing what I can to help more people know that these resources are available in the world for nominal costs. You don't have to go pay
Yes,
$100,000 to Stanford University to
exactly.
learn this stuff.
Yeah. And and Carol, let me pick up on one thing that you said about
Yeah,
vulnerability. Like, I would like to talk a little bit more
sure.
about this because it feels like it's the first step. No? You mentioned getting known a little bit more. And we often think about, oh, who's going first?
Yes,
No?
yes,
And should I go
yes.
first? Should I disclose or not disclose? What are your thoughts about that?
So you're right that vulnerability, a willingness to be appropriately authentic, I'll come back to what that means,
Mm,
and
yeah,
disclose more about yourself is a cornerstone. It's not all of it, but it's a cornerstone. Because not only is disclosure a way for you to learn more about me, and that takes risk, but it also
yeah,
is part of my willingness to give you feedback because I make myself vulnerable in giving you feedback too. So it's disclosure and feedback both have to do with vulnerability, both involved vulnerability. Now, that said, uh, I want to make 2 points. One is appropriate authenticity. So if
Mhm.
I'm the VP of marketing and we have lost market share for 3 months in a row, and I stand up in front of everybody and I say, well, no secret that that's 3 months in a row we've lost share. And I don't have any idea what's going on. I don't know why it's happening. I have no idea what we should do. And I should probably not be your VP of marketing. That might be vulnerable, but that is not what we're saying. Okay. That is that is not what we're advocating. However, if you stand up and you don't even mention the fact that you've lost share for 3 months, you lose all credibility. So the
Yeah,
alternative that we're talking about is you stand up and you say, okay, no secret, we've lost share. I wish I could stand here and tell you that I know exactly why and what we should do about it. I have some ideas. I've never needed all of you more. So which is the leader you'd rather follow? Number one, number two, or number
mhm,
three? So that's the first point I'll make about vulnerability. The second one is in terms of who goes first. In general, a good heuristic is if you are in a higher power position to the other person, whether it's hierarchically on the in the organization, you're higher, or culturally, or in some way there's a power differential between you. The higher power position person should needs to go first, because the
mhm.
lower power position person is already vulnerable. So to ask
Yeah,
them to go first is unfair. And the third thing I'll say, now that I'm thinking about it, is that when you're willing to do that, you model for for your people, for your family. You model something that creates much stronger, more robust relationships.
absolutely. And you give them permission to do
Exactly.
that. And if I may share a story, and
Yes.
I did in my team, we did retrospectives. And in the beginning, the retrospective sometimes was all about uh, the facts, what happened, what didn't happen. And it's interesting because when I started to share things that "Hmm, I don't feel good about what I did this, or saying something that was not appropriate,
Yep.
or I did not take enough attention in some detail with a
Yeah.
colleague in front of the other, then what happened? The other people also started to do that.
Exactly.
And and the beautiful thing is that it started this constructive, I think
Yes.
you call it constructive
Yes.
feedback, but then also the positive part, because you
Exactly.
say, okay, you give the permission to say the constructive, but then there are also good things. So you can say both. And if you do it, there's something that I hear from what you say is that you can care about the people and at the same time be daring. And
Absolutely. Most people think
if you do that,
that the opposite of indirect is uh, is brutal honesty. That is not the
yeah.
opposite of direct. The opposite of indirect is direct. So there are ways to let people know that what they're doing is in some way harming them, harming us, harming the team, harming the organization, harming the family. And we can get into the details. I mean, we have detailed models and skills, etc. And it's important to remember that embedded in giving somebody feedback, good a good in being skillful at giving somebody feedback, is including the impact of that person's behavior on you, which also makes
Hmm.
you vulnerable. And if you're
Yeah.
going to want to give feedback to somebody and have them listen, your willingness to be vulnerable might actually make them a little bit more open to it, right?
Yes.
And then also there's you said we use the word constructive. We use the word constructive, and then we use the word affirming. We never use the word negative and positive feedback, because all feedback is data, and more data is always better than less data. So not negative, not bad. It's just constructive, and it's a category. And the purpose, by the way, of constructive feedback is to move into problem solving, not to change the other person. To say, look, when you do this, it results in my feeling this way. If it happens with us, it might happen with other people, but even if it's only us, let's talk about, you know, I'll give you a real quick example. So we're in a meeting. You started the meeting. You started the meeting by saying it's your meeting, and you started by saying, I want to hear from everybody. And so I start to speak during the meeting, and you talk over me. You don't let me finish my sentence. And that happens 2 or 3 times. So now I have a choice. I have a choice to actually give you constructive feedback about the impact of the
Yes.
choices you made during that meeting.
Yeah.
So I can come to you and say, Roberto, you started that meeting saying you wanted to hear from everybody. 3 times when I started to mention X and Y and Z, the more specific you could be, the better. You never let me finish. And and what happened to me is I felt way less inclined to offer up my opinion after that. But you started the meeting by saying you wanted to hear from everybody. So you didn't hear from me, at least, everything I had to say. And I just thought I owed it to you to let you know that that was the impact of your behavior on me.
Yeah. That's how brilliant example. And also it feels so about the person and not about the other one. So you are talking about yourself all the
Right.
time. So the other person cannot say, no, that's not true,
Exactly.
because I know how I feel. You don't know how I feel. So please listen to me. And then you can do whatever you want with this feedback. And
Exactly.
this brings me one thing that probably it will be very interesting to hear from you, which is the what you call the three realities. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because
Yeah.
now we have seen one,
Yes.
which is my feeling and what I'm doing. So there is another one.
That's right. So in any exchange between 2 people, there are 3 realities. The visual on this is helpful, but imagine, uh, I'll use an example. I've used this example a lot, and it might even be in the book, but it's a good example. So imagine me, and imagine my husband, and those
Yeah.
those are reality number 1 and reality number 3. And
Mhm.
reality number 2 is whatever behavior one of us engages in, which is the only reality known to both of us.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so person number 1 has their intent, the way they see the world, why they do what they do, and they do something. That's reality number 2. Person number 3 only knows what they did and the impact that it had on them. So at any point in time, you've only got 2 of the 3 realities. So here's how this works. When we were much younger and we had little kids at home, and I was home with little kids, and my husband would come home from work, and I was desperate for adult interaction, I would I would come running in and to the front room, and he would collapse. He was a big Silicon Valley executive. He collapsed on the chair, and he'd pick up the newspaper, and I'd say, "Oh my God, you're home! You won't believe what happened today. I went to that new nursery school. It's already closed. I hate this place. Why are we living here? I don't want to be in Palo Alto. Why are we raising kids here?" Nya, 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 nya. And so then he would be reading his newspaper, not on an iPhone, on a real paper. He'd say, mm-hmm. And then I would say, "You're not listening." When I say you're not listening, I am in
Mhm.
his, I don't know whether he's listening or not. I'm not in his head. So we have this metaphorical net that we talk about between reality 1 and reality 2. And when in this case he's reality 1 and I'm reality 3. When I say you're not listening, I am over the net. I'm in his reality. And what being over the net just causes more defensiveness. Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Of course I was listening. You said you were all worked up about this new nursery school. And now I get even more agitated. And so then I jump over the net even more. How can you not care? Unless he says, I don't care. I don't know whether he cares
Yeah.
or not. How can you be so insensitive? An incredibly insensitive thing to say, because he's the most sensitive person I know. So what happens when we jump the net is we impute motives, we label, we make attributions, and that's not good feedback. Instead, if I can say, honey, when I am desperate for adult interaction and I'm talking about something that I'm really worked up about, and you make no eye contact, And the only thing I get is an occasional grunt or 2 words. I don't feel heard. I don't
Mhm.
feel heard. He can't say, yeah, you do. And when I don't feel heard, I feel sad and I feel distanced. So that's the formula. When you do X, I feel, insert feeling word, which is why there's a vocabulary of feelings in the book in the appendix. Every student and participant in Leaders in Tech gets a vocabulary of a laminated vocabulary of feelings. You can always tell who's taking Touchy Feely at Stanford because they're walking around with their little laminated vocabulary, and it's adorable. Uh, but most people don't know how to do that. Instead, they say, I feel that. I feel that you don't care. I feel like this doesn't matter to you. That's all over the net. There's no feeling words in there. And then if you, on top of that, add, and I'm telling you this because what I'm hoping the result of this conversation is, and honey, I'm telling you this because when I feel this way, unheard and sad and distanced, I can't be there for you the way I want to be there for you.
Mm.
That's why I'm telling you. So compare that to the way we
Yeah.
usually give feedback, right? But
Yeah.
it's a discipline.
Yes, absolutely. And when you say this, it feels on one side I hear the curiosity of the other person. So you're not jumping to the judgment. You're gonna say, okay, this is what's happening. What's your intention when you do this?
Right.
So you are curious on the other side, and at the same time you share how are your
Right. In
feelings
fact,
and why
in
you're
fact, if we go back to
sharing
this
this.
example, what is making it hard for you to engage with me the way I
Yeah,
need is the curiosity. And then he says, well, if you want, uh, you know, my full attention, you have to give me some time to unwind when I get home from
yeah,
work. And now we're moved into problem solving. Okay, how much time do you need? 30 minutes. No, I can't live with 30 minutes. How about 15? No, I want like 2 minutes, right? So we compromise on 15. But so that's the essence of
yeah.
productive exchanges. That's how we handle conflict productively. That's how we can be honest with each other. That's how we get to know each other better.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. At the same time, I've been there so many times, especially with kids and
Oh,
family,
yes.
who are the people when we usually come home. There is a metaphor of a bottle, which shared my coach Marie shared with me with that. It's like a Coke bottle that we
Yes,
keep
yes,
shaking it all day
yes.
long, and
Oh, yes,
you
yes.
shake, you shake, and then but it's closed because
Yeah. And then
and then you
finally you're
arrive
full.
home and you relax, open the bottle, and what happens? Bam.
Yeah,
So even if we know the theory, sometimes may happen that we go over the net, we
totally,
say something that should not.
totally.
So this brings me a question, which is how do we repair this when things go wrong?
Well, two things that I want to say. First is in the book, we talk about how we're all equipped with two antenna. One
Mm,
antenna is my internal antenna that tells me what's going on for that I'm tracking my emotional state. The
uh-huh.
other antenna helps me pick up signals on what might be going on for you. And the more of this work you do, the more you hone those antenna to pick up subtle
Yeah,
signals. So if
yeah,
I am really worked up having come home from the office and I'm in touch with that, a really good thing to do when my significant other has their own bottled up stuff is to say, you know what? Let's both take a minute and just
uh,
breathe. And maybe, I mean, I'm a big meditator, so for me, meditation helps a lot. But whatever practice you might have to just unwind a little bit already sets a different circumstance, a
yeah,
different context for the conversation. Now,
yes,
things still go awry, and then we still have to repair. So there's a whole chapter in the book about repair. And repair requires, first of all, empathy. And that
mhm,
doesn't mean you have to agree with the other person. It doesn't mean
no,
that the whatever they're feeling is what you would be feeling in that circumstance. So if if we go back to the example I gave you, if it wouldn't make him sad if I wasn't responsive, he it doesn't matter. He still knows sadness. And so he can be in touch with that's why emotions, that's why they call it touchy feely. everything revolves around the feelings because he can relate to sadness. And the minute he can relate to sadness, he can relate to me in that situation instead of whatever caused it. That's where people
Yeah.
get into so much trouble. Well, I don't know, that wouldn't upset me. Okay, but you do know upset, don't you? So instead of
Yes.
arguing about the what,
Yeah.
what the cause was, meet, and that's what we call meeting somebody emotionally. The better
Yeah.
you learn to meet somebody emotionally, the more productive your conversations will be.
Oh, thank you, Carol, for sharing this. And just reminded me of what happens with the kids. No, they get, my son, for example, sometimes gets frustrated or something. They say, and I think rationally, it's just a stupid
Yes,
whatever
yes,
inside the word. But then I think, okay, it's his toy. For him, it's like, wow, it's my work. And I'm
exactly.
taking, for example, his toy off in 5 minutes earlier. And it's like, what will happen to me if someone comes out right now and takes me from the
Like,
this and
sure,
takes
it
me out
pulls
of
you
the
off, yeah. You might be a
and,
little frustrated too, huh?
oh, I would probably be even more violent. So that's the point. When you do this, okay, I will not get angry about that, but I know how it feels.
Exactly, exactly. And that is so key to empathy and so key to meeting somebody else emotionally. And in fact, it wasn't until, if we go back to my co-author and dear friend David and I, and the big fight we had, part of what made it worse and worse is that I didn't feel emotionally met. And it wasn't
Mm,
until I did that we were able to even begin repair.
yeah,
I mean, the other thing is there are other elements, of course. You got to get to the point where you don't make the other person wrong. Uh, and your whole goal isn't just to make the other person wrong. And
yes,
at the same
yeah,
time, saying I'm sorry is pretty powerful, especially if you mean it.
yeah. It's like you are seeing the person. At least you feel seen, as you
Exactly.
said in the beginning. No, you are seeing. They see how I'm feeling. They don't agree, but at least they see me.
Exactly.
And so I can calm. And again, coming back to the kids, when I say to my, and which by the way, having kids is one of the most wonderful things because they teach us so
Oh,
much.
yes.
We
Oh,
have
yes.
uh, so many opportunities, and if you fail one day, you can try the day
They'll give you
after,
many
and
more.
then exactly. So we're so grateful for that. And then when this happens, uh, you say, okay, I'm sorry, and they okay,
I
and
mean,
they forgive
sometimes
you.
sometimes just saying, "I'm really sorry. I see how upset you are."
Exactly.
That's like, I see you. Exactly.
And
It's like release valve.
yes, yes, and it goes down. Oh, it's not a big deal.
Sometimes I say, "Would you rather be right or would you rather be effective?"
uh,
A lot of
yeah,
times when it comes to interpersonal issues, it comes down to that.
yeah. It connects with the winning the
Yes.
argument. You want to be right. I want to win. So if you want to
That means
win,
there's gonna be
there is
a
a
loser.
loser.
Exactly.
Exactly. So you talk about the antenna. Now perhaps it's the moment to. I see time flying.
Yes, yes, yes. I was gonna ask
Maybe
you
now it's the
next.
moment to switch the antenna to the chat and see if we have some question. Let's see. I'm just bringing this down here, and let's see if there are questions. Let me check. Okay. Mm-mm-mm. Most recent. Okay, I'm going to start from the beginning here. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you, Julia. Uh, Hi, Carlos. Carlos is asking, how could we make this course available in business schools to have healthier societies? Is not this the focus on the hard science, on the reason behind the polarizing society we see worldwide? Great question. I see perhaps a connection, Carol, to the work you do with leaders in tech, with your last project with Carole Robin AI. Perhaps you want to talk a little bit about this. So it's a way to bring this to more people.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it would be an incredible dream come true if many more business schools adopted this. And I talked a little bit about some of the barriers for entry for that. But it
Yeah.
also feels important to me that the work be democratized, that it be available to people who can't afford business schools, uh, who can't, especially at those prices. Um,
Yeah.
it feels to me, which is why David and I wrote the book. The editor from Penguin Random House who came to us said, so how come there is a course that for decades students have said was worth the entire price of tuition and there's no book? And we said, because you don't really learn about interpersonal dynamics by reading about it. You actually have to engage with other people. And
Yeah.
he said, so how are you okay that the only people that get to learn this are those that are privileged enough and lucky enough to go to the Stanford Business School? So then we looked at each other and said, I guess we're going to have to write a book. So it took us 4 years, because the most important part of the book is the section at the end of each chapter called Deepen Your Learning, where it tells you what you can go do with somebody to, if it's not a, I mean, it disappoints me if somebody picks it up, reads it, and says, well, that's interesting, puts it back on the shelf and doesn't do anything with it. You will not become more interpersonally competent by just doing that. But if you take even just a few of the Deepen Your Learning sections, you go to the book website, connectandrelate.com. There's all kinds of suggestions. Start your own learning group. There's a self-assessment that you can download for free, and take it, see how interpersonally competent you are, and then give it to a few people in your life and compare how they see you to how you see yourself. And now
Oh,
that creates a whole learning agenda for you, right? So
yeah.
we've tried to provide, and that's free. Um, and the book cost is nominal. And now that's why I'm so excited about Carole Robin AI, because Carole Robin AI speaks 100 languages. It's been fed everything I ever wrote, not just my book,
Wow.
but all my lectures, all my papers. And it's a 6 month free trial on the apps at the App Store. And then after that, it's pretty nominal. It's like $8 a month or something. But it's like having me as your coach, right? Like you're about to go into a meeting. I don't quite know what to say because I'm still
Yeah.
feeling badly about what happened last time. Or, my wife and I had a fight and I don't quite know where to start to repair. Or, my kid's driving me crazy. I'm afraid I'm going to do something that's really not very productive. So you can ask it
Yeah.
anything, anytime in 100 languages. So
Wow.
for me, that's democratizing this knowledge. And so back to your listener, to our listeners' question, uh, I could not agree with you more that if we had a critical mass of human beings on this planet equipped with these skills and this knowledge, we wouldn't just have more functional teams and better organizations. We'd have stronger communities. We would have more functional families and closer families. We might even have more functional governments, and when I dream really big. But the barrier is high because it requires investment of time and energy more than anything.
Yes.
Um, and B, some people aren't convinced. Uh, you know, one of the most difficult moments of my entire professional career was when I was on a very popular podcast. And when we got off the podcast, one of the fellows who was a host said to me, every person on the planet should read this book. And I said, I couldn't agree with you more. But so if that's true, why are we having such a hard time getting this was when the book was first out. Why are we having so much trouble getting anybody to cover it? No coverage by the
Yeah.
press, no podcasts wanting to learn more about it. Why are
Yeah.
we having such a hard time? And he said, well, that's easy. If you'd written a book entitled Three Surefire Way to Get Rid of Toxic People in Your Life, you'd have a runaway bestseller. But that's not who I am, and that's not what I taught, and that's not what I've spent my life on. It's really easy to connect with people that are just like you and think just like you and have the same view on life. It's much harder to connect with people that are very different than you, and yet we can't afford to only spend our entire life with people that are just like us, or we end up with the world we have right now, incredibly polarized and toxic in so many places. So thank you for that question and giving me an opportunity to get on my little soapbox. I believe I was put on this planet to help people learn how to connect, especially people who want to connect across differences. And uh, and that's my life's work. And sometimes it gets
Thank you.
frustrating.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol, for sharing this. And thank you, Carlos, for asking the question.
Yeah.
So there is another question here. Can you restate the 6 areas? Of course, we will give you, uh, we'll add notes
Yes.
and everything.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
will do that. Thank you.
You want me to do that, or
Thank
do you
you,
want
Nicole.
to send them to the notes?
No, I think we can put in the chat. We see there are more questions. Thanks for the conversation. I'm curious to know, what have you found that people struggle most in building good quality interpersonal relationship? Oh, so it's what's the biggest challenge? And there's a second question, which is, have you noticed the difference between the challenges faced by men versus women? This question from Anita. And I would add one tip, at least for me, to connect with the question, which is, what's about anger
Yes.
that's so different?
Yes.
And
Well,
I think it's,
they're all related. The answer is all related. So the thing that most people struggle with the most is the feely part of touchy feely. So they
mm,
call it touchy feely because such a big emphasis on feelings, not on touching. Okay. But most people have been socialized to leave feelings out of it, especially in business. And
mm,
furthermore, most men, or many men, are socialized to, all that feeling stuff, that's not manly. And it'll make you look weak if you express it. And of course, then women enter male dominated arenas, and then they're acculturated the same way. The only feeling that's somehow allowed for men often is anger, as long as it's expressed appropriately, because that
mhm,
somehow is manly. But what the research shows is that anger is quite often a secondary emotion. Usually we feel angry. Underneath the anger is either fear or hurt. But those aren't manly. So instead we lead with anger. And I'll give you a great anecdote that I want to share at this
okay.
juncture, because one of the things our leaders and tech CEOs learn is the power of being willing to speak feelings, and
Mm,
not just anger. So one of the CEOs from a recent cohort wrote to me and said, "So I found out on Friday afternoon that we were going to miss a major software release deadline. And I spent all weekend furious with my team. And I spent all weekend thinking about how Monday morning I was going to come in and just blast them and, tell them that I felt like firing half of them, etc., which is, by the way, not a feeling. I feel like firing somebody is not a feeling." They said, "Then I remembered what you taught us about anger. And I stopped and thought about, what is it that I'm so angry about? And then I
mm,
realized, this is again internal antenna getting honed. What am I so angry about? I realized I was afraid I was the only person who was taking this miss as seriously as I was,
mm,
because it could lead to a company existential crisis. It was going to have such a negative impact. And I was afraid that I was the only person who saw that. So on Monday morning, I came in, and instead of blasting them all, I shared that with them. I said I was getting ready to blast you all, and then I told him the whole thought process. And he said, "So yeah, the bottom line is I'm scared, and I figured rather than be angry at you, I would let you know." And he said he's a three-time entrepreneur. He said he has never had a team rally that quickly around a
wow.
problem to solve it in his entire career. And I
Wow.
bet you that would not have happened if he come in Monday morning and told them how they all were worthless, and he didn't know why he had fired them, and was furious.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol, for sharing that. It's this brilliant example of what you said in the beginning about the appropriate vulnerability, because he
Exactly.
shared this, I was going to do this, so I felt that, but then I thought this, and this is why I share with you,
Yes,
because
that's
blah
exactly
blah
how he
blah.
did it, and it
Yeah.
was so powerful.
Wow.
So powerful.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Anita, also for asking this
And
question.
to her point, because men are even more socialized to avoid feelings and emotions, it's even harder for men. I think that's changing. I think this generation of young men who are like the MBAs now, I find are the men are much more open to the power and importance of emotions than they were 20 years ago.
Definitely. I also
Yeah.
agree. And hopefully for
Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence helped a lot.
thank you. Okay, let's see if we have some more question. Let me refresh one more time. We have little time actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is one more. Let's see. Mercedes. Oh, hola Mercedes. Pleasure to see you here. I reminded me how much strength and joy come from meaningful connection and open communication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
lovely.
Thank you.
And by the
Thank you.
way, emotions, there are categories of emotions. Two categories of emotions are connecting. Positive emotions like joy and happiness and care and love are connecting emotions. Vulnerable emotions like, excuse me, fear, hurt, envy, jealousy are also connecting emotions because they make you vulnerable.
Yeah.
Negative emotions like anger, irritation, disgust are distancing emotions. So the more time you spend when you do express feelings, expressing feelings that are connecting rather than feelings that are distancing, that doesn't mean you should never say you're angry, but stop and ask yourself, is there something under the anger? Because that might be more connecting than just expressing the anger, as my
Yeah.
CEO found out.
Again, one reminder to turn on your internal antenna
Exactly.
before going out and to see what's happening.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you. And there is one more question. Of course, Vasu, we are going to put the link of the app into the chat later. And there is one
It's
more
very
question
easy.
from
It's Carole
Hartley.
Robin AI. CaroleRobin.ai, but just spell Carole Robin correctly with an E, because everybody drops the E. And also Robin. It's only like one single bird, Robin, not two B's, not an S, not two N's, just simple. CaroleRobin.ai.
Great. Won't miss it. One last question from Hartley. When are you doing this work in hierarchical
Yeah.
organization, how can safety be created from sharing truth from all levels?
Yeah.
Will it only happen if the top people model the work? Hmm.
Yeah, an excellent question. So there's one model that we teach that we haven't talked about that's really important, which is called
Mhm.
the 15% rule,
Oh,
which is we all have our comfort zone and we say things and that we don't even think twice about. Think of this as three concentric circles. The outermost circle is our danger zone where in a million years we wouldn't say that. But there is a circle in the middle, which is our zone of learning. And we have to step, and it's also our zone where we deepen relationship. We have to step outside our comfort zone into our learning zone in order to be more effective interpersonally. However, my students used to say, but Carole, the minute I step out of my comfort zone, how do I know I'm not in my danger zone? And so we came up with this idea of 15%. Think a little bit outside your comfort zone. You'll feel it, you'll be like, this feels a little bit vulnerable, but it won't be so big that you'll freak yourself out or the other person out. And what's interesting about that is when you do that and it goes well with that person, you have a slightly larger comfort zone.
yeah,
It's expanded a little bit, and then you can go 15% from that. So that's one way to address hierarchy, even if you're in the lower power position. If you're a leader and then you're in the higher power position, I already talked about how important it is for you to start and model. And think about this. Nobody knows better how good a job they're doing managing than those who are being managed. Like, I don't know how good a manager I am unless the people I manage tell me. So if you learn how to provide feedback in a way that lowers defensiveness, it doesn't guarantee they won't get defensive, but it lowers the probability, it heightens the probability of success. You might find that, you know, that turns things around in some cases.
Absolutely. Yeah, you will learn more.
Yeah,
They will open. Yeah. Thank you so much, Carol. I'm conscious of the time.
yeah,
It's almost the hour. I would like to ask you one more question
yeah.
to wrap up. So, if we had to choose, what would you like to see more and less in the world?
Oh, I'd like to see a lot more curiosity and a lot less judgment.
Wow.
That one's easy. I think we'd have a
Yeah,
vastly different world if we just moved the needle on that.
absolutely. I cannot agree more. I cannot agree more. And we hope this.
Luz,
Loose?
no, sorry.
No problem. Another moment. No, you see,
Another
another
moment.
moment.
My
Exactly. So
apologies again for having to be
curiosity.
home and not being able to do this in a totally quiet environment. But you know what? Hopefully, it makes me a real person over here.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that. I hope the people connected enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for your question. Amazing question. Very deep and to the
I
point.
ditto
Give
that.
an opportunity to.
I echo wonderful, wonderful questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So it was a pleasure, Carol. I hope everything is well
Likewise.
for the time being. And we will definitely keep following your work and everything and put all
Thank
the
you.
links,
Thank you.
everything in
Oh,
the
and
chat so
one
we can
other thing I'll
spread
say
more.
about Leaders in Tech, we
Yeah,
we have programs that we run which are like taking Touchy Feely on steroids. It's all based on the Stanford curriculum that I taught for 20 years. People from all over the world sign up for it, and I know that in the show notes you'll also have a link to our Leaders in Tech website.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So I hope to
Thank you
see
also
some
for
of you
sharing.
there, and thank you for coming, and thank you for your wonderful questions and your interest in the work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now